I'm not going to show the process of mixing the mortar. It's a little time consuming and it's kind of messy, and I already have a video. I'm going to link that video down below. If you want to watch me mix mortar because you're that bored, then I'll link that video below on how to mix a mortar. I will say this, I use Quikrete mortar mix. This is a Home Depot product. It's basically brick mortar, sand topping mix, if you will. There is the green stripe and there is the red stripe. If you use the one with the green, you're good to go. The next day, if you got some high spots or whatever, you can manipulate that with the blade and you won't have a problem. If you use the one with the red, the next day, you're not manipulating nothing. That red dries, the red stripe dries hard as a rock, so the next day you're stuck with whatever you do, you have to live with. If you want to mix your own mortar, you could. There's a lot of people out there that do. It's a 5-to-1 ratio, so you would have cement as the 1, and you would have sand as the 5, and then the water. That's a big pain. I wouldn't suggest anybody do that unless you're, I don't know, working for a construction company or something like that and had a need to mix it rather than use the bags. But I typically get, on a shower this size, I'm getting 3 to 4 bags. So I have 3 ready, but I have bought 4 just in case I need the extra one. A lot of what I do is tub to shower conversions, and in that case I always use 4. That's usually a 5 by almost 3. So it really kind of varies, but always get more than you need than not enough, because it would suck getting into pouring your pan and then realize you don't have enough mortar. So that answers any questions you might have about how much I'm using. But I'm going to mix this all together. I'm going to set it in here and tap it down. I tap it down with a hoe. You know, just, you can use anything you want, but you don't want any air pockets and all that stuff. And so once I do that and I start screeding out, then I'll probably come back and show you that process. Okay, it is 15 minutes later, 10-15 minutes later. I have used 3 bags of mortar in here. I have a 4th bag on hand, but I'm not going to use it. I unscrewed my barrel probably another 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch or so. So now I'm pretty close to 2 inches at the base of the barrel down here, right below where the drain is at. I threw in my mortar and just kind of moved it around by hand. Of course I had gloves on, but I just moved it around by hand until I get a good feel about how much I need, and this is enough. When I'm on the inside of my curb, I want enough room, about 2 inches or better on the inside of my curb, so I don't want to push that limit and add another bag. At this point, I take, again, how I do it, I take this blade, 12-inch blade, and I just start moving the mortar around to the areas that I think I need it in order to get my slope going on. Eventually, I move to my trowel, and then I start screeding out and getting all this stuff not only packed. Well, I'll pack it down in a few minutes, but not only packed, but this facilitates a nice smooth surface. And then of course I have different levels I'll be using to check my level, to check my slope on all 6 sides, here, 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 corners, and then the sides. And you know, it's just playing around with it for a while. It takes me from this point probably another 10 or 15 minutes, just getting it to the point where I want it at and making sure everything's level. And by the way, before you start all that stuff, make sure your drain is level. There's a little bit of play in these threads, and so at the end, when you have everything the way you want it, then just take out the play, you know, push your mortar up against the drain, make sure it's level on that side and this side, and get rid of that play. That's about all I can tell you. Let me show just a little bit of it. I'll set this up on the bench. general idea is this. You have a 2-foot level, and you put your 2-foot level on a corner to the drain. Make sure your bubble is way off. Again, that 1/4 inch per foot I don't really pay attention to. I want my bubble as far back as possible. There's slight, just very slightly, but it's in the back. You do it on that one too. Make sure your bubble is in the back. You do it on this one. Make sure your bubble is in the back. And you do it on that one. And then once you're sure that your floor is nice and flat, I don't mean level, I mean flat, and your bubble is off, then you use your shorter level and you do the same thing on these sides. You make sure your bubble's off. And then you're going to check your perimeter too. Make sure you got flat edges all the way around. I kind of have that in my eye. I don't know why I do, but anytime I screed out one of these pans, I almost always get it. The first time I put the level on here is when I usually get it right off the bat. I did manipulate this side a little bit, but it wasn't off much. And then the back, if I can reach it, I can't reach it with one hand on the camera. And then the front. And the front, I'm off slightly. So I'll probably move a little bit more of this in order to get this more level. But the main goal on here, which I had this up here earlier, to make sure both this direction and that direction that your drain is as level as possible. And that's about it. This mortar will set overnight. I will put a fan on it. The fan will run 24/7. Tomorrow, I'll start doing my wallboard. That will take up time. The next day, I'll do the red guard. That will take up time. The point is, I've got probably 3 gallons. I'm going to guess about 3 gallons. About a gallon a bag. 3 gallons of water in here. I need as much of this water to dissipate as possible before I ever consider red guarding this or even putting tile on it. So the longer you can wait, the better off you are. And that's it. That's the gist. If you see the inside, I have enough width here to get a good amount of wallboard on. But again, my wallboard is only going to go up to here. I'm going to leave the gap. The tile is going to slide up under the gap. So no water will ever be able to transfer up any wallboard because the wallboard doesn't set. In fact, the wallboard is going to set about where that black line is at. The wallboard will set there and the floor tile will set up against that. So there's no wicking of water that's ever possible. And now it is the next day. Shower pan is dried for the most part. For those of you who subscribe to me for the last 6 or 7 years or so, or even the last year, you're going to notice a very distinguishable difference in this part of the video. My voice will be crystal clear. I finally broke down and bought me a lapel mic. I've actually bought a couple off of Amazon and none of them worked with this Canon that I have, and I finally found one that worked. So I know there was a complaint recently on, I like my intro music, by the way. I know a lot of you don't, but I do like it. And I have a tendency of talking through my intro music as it starts out, and some people have complained for that first 60 or 90 seconds of my video that they weren't hearing me well, and this will facilitate hearing me well. So the intro music will still be there, but it will be a little bit more in the background than normal. Now that I have this lapel mic, I think that takes care of that. Anyway, getting on to the shower pan. As I said yesterday, there's about roughly 3 gallons of water in here. So during the night, the fan was on it. So for the last 12 hours, 13 hours or so, the fan was on it and the air conditioning was running. So it's probably, I don't know, I'm guessing now, about half of that. It's probably 1.5 gallons of water that's still remaining inside of there. When should I start tiling? Or in my case, when should I start putting the waterproof or the red guard down? And I think I'm using Aqua Defense on this application. It won't be red guard,
but basically same thing. So when should I start doing that? My suggestion, especially for a DIYer, you're going to let this set as long as possible. If you can let this set, especially with a fan on it, for 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, the more the merrier. Again, you're trying to evaporate as much of this moisture in here as possible before you put a waterproofer and encapsulate it. And so I'm not privy to that type of time. I'm usually about 3 days in, maybe 4 at most, before I start having to put my waterproofer down, because all the other stuff that I have to do to prep my shower has been done by then. So I'm putting a fan on it every single day. When I leave today, after I start doing the wallboard, I will put a fan on it again, and then again tomorrow, and then the following day I'll start doing the red guard. So I've got about 3 days, maybe 4 days of this to dry out. And as I also referenced on my other video, if you use the right type of mortar, you'll be able to come in this case I have a 12-inch blade, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you get a larger one would work too. So if there's any high spots, I know there's other ways of doing a shower pan. If you look at other videos, some people, you know, start their mud packing all the way around the perimeter, and they make sure that that's screeded out and level and all that stuff, and then they start doing inward. And as you noticed on mine, I do mine a different way, and it works for me. So as I showed you yesterday, I put my level on all 3 sides, and I'm pretty much level. There are some small discrepancies, and there are some that are not. If you put a blade on here, you're going to notice that sets flat all the way down, and with a small discrepancy right there. So what I'm going to do, start scraping that off a little bit over there. I'm going to put my blade over there. I notice there's a little hump there, and with the ease of that, you saw in just a couple of seconds, I'm able to make that hump go away. So that's basically how I'm making sure that I'm flat as possible. You don't have to get this perfect. Understand something. You're going to be setting thin set on top of here. You can manipulate how much thin set that you're actually putting on here, as opposed to whatever your discrepancies are. There's a small hump here. You know, clearly you can see that, and then I just I know that's awful noisy. Where's my level? Then once you get done scraping, you're going to put a level across all 4 sides, and we're level there. We'll level there. Sorry. It's just off slightly there, and so what I'll end up doing, because this is a little higher spot, I'll end up scraping off a little bit of that to get that level. And then that's level 2, just slightly off, and again scraping off some of that. So anyway, where these folds are, and I've been asked this question many times, where these folds are, it's pushed up on the top, but it's not pushed up on the bottom, so there's a gap, and people have pointed that out when they're doing their own. They have pointed out that they have a little gap going on here, and obviously you don't want that. So what I do is I stick something in there like a shim. Usually it's Durarock, you know, Durarock, Wonderboard, Hardybacker, whatever you prefer. I'm going to use a piece of wood for now just to show you what I'm talking about. And if you stick a piece of Durarock down inside of there and get it to the height that you want it, cut it off at that point, stick it down in there on all 4 sides, because you're going to have folds 4 times 4, and you put that down in there, and then you fill in this gap, you fill in the excess with thin set and let that dry before you do your waterproofing. You're going to be pretty flat. This is one of the reasons that people seem to want to put their wallboard in first before they do their pan, because they know that there's this bump out, and they feel like if I put my wallboard on first, it'll push that in, so by the time I do my pan, I won't have to deal with what I'm talking about here. The problem that I still have, and that I would never ever contemplate doing, is that if you put a wallboard, no matter what it is, first and then pour your pan, you're subject to wicking water. Yes, we're going to red guard this. Yes, we're going to make it water impenetrable. Yes, we're going to seal the tile and the grout and all that stuff. But if something goes wrong and water does get into your pan material, i.e. this mortar, then that mortar could easily, and I've seen it time and time again when I tear out showers, wick up. I've got one video where it actually went up about 15, 16 inches, and there was mold, black mold, and all that stuff. So I would never, ever contemplate putting my wallboard first just to facilitate the bump out, because that's the only reason you would ever put a wallboard in. This is much better. You know, the Durarock, Hardybacker, whatever, will fit right inside of there. You put thin set down in there, and then it's inert, because once you put the waterproofer down, it doesn't matter what you've stuck in there. But there you go. That's kind of the way I do it. Next will be the wallboard, and as I mentioned on another video I have, how to properly set wallboard, which I will link down below. You can follow that process. My wallboard goes up to about this line right here. This is about 3/4 of an inch. So my wallboard will go up to about there, and then eventually my floor tile will go up inside that gap, and that goes all the way around. So I have a good part of 3 inches here. So right at about 2.5 inches or so, the wallboard will stop. And in this case, I always wrap this with Durarock, and I paint it really well with Red Guard, 3 coats on that. No wallboard ever touches the surface of this pan. And there you go. That is how to install the pan liner, pour a shower pan, and get it prepped and ready for tile. And I hope you learned something out of this video. I took a long time to produce it. I went overboard, as I normally do, plus the lapel mic, and I hope you like the lapel mic. I think it's going to be really advantageous.